Plaçage again, and this is episode 3 of our conversation. And in tonight's video, we are going to be talking about Plaçage, just laying the groundwork of what is Plaçage. Actually, what we talked about in episodes 1 and 2 already, but just going to give a baseline. And then we're also going to talk about this idea of Blanquemiento, which means whitening, right? If you speak Spanish, you would know Blanca, and I'm getting a call. Anyway, you would know Blanca means white, and so it would be a whitening. And then we're also just going to pose some questions about modern day Black people. And we're going to look at the population in Brazil, and we're also going to talk about Black people today in America briefly. So I'm going to try to keep this short. I am going to play a couple of video clips. Hopefully, folks can hear me and all of that good stuff. But we're probably just going to jump right in here. And let me know in the chat if you can hear me. Let me pull up YouTube just to make sure I'm live. You guys know I've been having a lot of issues with the Restream. So it's like I'm going back to StreamYard most likely. And then I see today that Dr. Boyce Watkins is actually going to be using not StreamYard, Restream. Just like, good luck. Let me see if I can hear myself on here. Testing. Okay, so I'm good. All right, so I'm just going to leave YouTube open. And I want to play a few clips after I kind of set the tone. So, what is Plaçage? Plaçage is a legal system, and this was back in the 1800s. And the system was in place to where French and Spanish slave colonies in New Orleans, specifically, it was set up to where free women of color, a lot of times these were mixed race descendants, they would enter into these unions where they basically have a beneficial arrangement, right? So, comfortable lifestyle, furnished home, financial arrangement where she would receive money for herself and any children that would come of that arrangement. The money, oftentimes, the women would use for starting a business and things like that. I don't know why my chat feature isn't working, but I'm going to leave it up just in case someone comes through. So that is Plaçage, and we've talked about it a couple of times. The benefits of it, and we also looked at the Haitian migrants, the Haitian refugees who were free people of color, and the situation they were in once they were here. We haven't talked about the men, we've only focused on the women. But these Creole women would, well, not the Creole women. A lot of time, the Creole women would be endowed with dowries, and the Haitian refugees women they came and they sought out how to start a family, and their only option was to go into these plessage relationships, which grew in New Orleans. So, I want to talk about the whitening. And this is going to be interesting. I'm going to start with a first video clip, which describes a bit about this painting that you see in the thumbnail. This painting is by Modesto Branco. He is a Spaniard, I believe, and it was in 1895. And the title of it is in Portuguese, but it basically means the curse of Ham. If you're if you're a Christian or if you've ever read the Bible in Genesis, there's a story which we'll talk about. That's where that background of that painting actually comes from. So we'll learn more about that thinking in Brazil and how things have turned out for them today. So this is the first clip.
yes, there's a lot of interracial marriages and couples, but I have noticed that once Black Brazilians in particular get any kind of money. I mean, I'm not even talking about filthy rich. I'm just talking about maybe just like a nice job that you won't lose. Some education. I found that many of them, both men and women, tend to marry white. Can you explain this to us?
No, yeah, tend to marry white is a Brazilian thing because of the whole idea that was implemented in our ideas in the beginning of the 20th century. Okay, so it's not just because of the money. You will see these relations happening also in lower groups. So if you go to the favelas, you're gonna see that happen. You're gonna see it all over. The point is because the very white people are not marrying into the.
They do not marry black people at all.
At all. The very white Brazilians, they're very segregated. As segregated as Mississippi 1965.
Okay. Yeah. Yes, I agree.
Okay. Yeah. They're the very white. So the white people in Brazil, we divide them academically in 3 categories.
Okay.
The very white people, the white people, and the read as white people. Like in Brazil, Jewish people are white, and as Turkish people are white. Japanese people are white.
Okay, cool. Okay. Maybe socially white?
Socially white.
So we heard in that clip where there's this conversation happening about what Brazil looks like today for people of color. How the norm is what the lady was saying there is that if you get even a little bit, a sprinkle of money, you're immediately, as a Black person, dating and marrying white, right? But there's these different groups within Brazil where you're white, you're very white, and you don't interact, it seems, with Black people at all when it comes to dating and marriage. Or they're going to talk about another type of white where it's socially white. And then they're also just going to talk about the non-white. So it's very interesting. Hey, JMJ, thanks for joining. So that is the first clip that they're talking about. The next clips, they're going to get into a little more detail about what's happening in Brazil. And I'm going to round out the thinking that the Brazilians had to the same thinking that during the time of Plaçage, what the Spaniards and the French had, and how this relates to the earlier episodes where we talked about the Plaçage system and how open the French and Spanish were about Plaçage and dating, and obviously having the system in place where the women were kind of automatically going to be set up with a white man and having children that would look more white. So I'll play this next clip.
The poor whites, the ones who live in the ghettos with the Black Brazilians, they are the ones who actually can be racist and marry a Black person. This happens in Brazil. A white person, a white poor person, marries a Black person and says, "I love you, but I don't love what you are. I love the kid that was gonna come out of you. That's gonna be beautiful." And then we erase the whole idea that this kid is Black as well.
So people, when they're actually in these interracial families, nobody is kind of consciously talking about Blackness or saying that they are Black.
No, they're just repeating the mistakes because it was in schools. If you read books from 1917 for 1945, it was in the book.
I gotta find this book. I want to find.
This. I can show you.
Okay.
That. I can show you that later. And everything is based on the picture that I wanted to put here.
Explain to us this picture.
Is called the Redemption of Cam. Whatever. Cam was one of the kids of Noah, and he saw his father naked, and that's how they justified that the Black race was cursed. The Christians, they justify racism throughout the years through the curse that is based basically on the Bible.
Okay, so that was the next clip where they are explaining the photo. And this photo, if some of you all remember, I did study Spanish. It was my minor in college. And so I took a lot of classes. Particularly, I did study in Spain for a while, and we studied a lot about Latin American culture. And this is where I learned about this painting, not as deep as what they're talking about. However, it is very interesting, and I'm going to pull up the painting and I'm going to show something else, which is actually a photograph. Now, what he was relating to is this. If you see the grandmother here, she's obviously African descent, clearly, unambiguously black. She's a black woman, right? Like me. Like you would look at me and you would immediately say, you are a black woman. Now, the woman right next to her is perceived to be her daughter, a mixed race woman, what many would call mulatta, and the man right next to her would be the spouse, so an obviously white man. Now look at the expressions that they're all making though in this image. They're they're both looking, the partners, the daughter, the husband, they're looking at the child. The child appears white. You wouldn't look at that child and go, "Yeah, they're mixed with something." No, you would just say they're white, right? They're looking at the grandmother, and what many people say about this painting is that the child is almost the way they're posed, blessing, sending blessings to the grandmother, right? And you see that the lady here, the mulatta, the mixed race woman, she's kind of pointing or touching the grandmother, and you focus on the grandmother and what is she doing. This is something that you would see commonly if you have ever gone to a church, especially or really any church, but a Christian church. The raising of hands would signify that she is giving thanks. What would she be giving thanks for just by looking at this picture? Well, the statement that Modesto is showing is that this is, in the title of the painting, translated to English, the redemption of Ham, right? And we're going to talk about this. What is this redemption of Ham? The redemption comes in is because there is no more blackness in this next generation, as you can see. It's white. Blanc, Blanquemiento. That is the meaning of this painting. Now, where is this coming from, this Blanquemiento, this redemption of Ham? It goes back to Christianity. So if you are not Christian, I'll break it down for you very briefly. Noah had 3 sons. Ham is pictured right in the center, and you can see that he is black, right? So when you go back into thinking about slavery, let me see if I can find the image that I want to show here. The slave owners, during the abolitionist movement, they brought up this idea of the curse of Ham, with the curse being not only, and if you read the scriptures, it talks about kind of being a slave to the brothers. I'll bring up the exact scripture here in a moment, but also the fact that they're black, their blackness, that is a curse. So these black people are the descendants of Ham. They are meant to be our slaves, and part of their curse is the blackness. That is what they portrayed during slavery, right? And of course, they portrayed a lot of other things, you know, taking away the humanity of black people, right? So this is the actual verse Genesis 9, I think 20, yes. And Noah began to be a husbandman, and he planted a vineyard, and he drank of the wine and was drunken. And he was uncovered within his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the, I don't know if am I allowed to say that on YouTube? So saw this of his father and told his two brethren without. So this is the statement right there that I just spoke of. There's a lot of translations about that though. Some think that is the fact that he saw his father without clothes. Others actually think that there is a alternate meaning there with that statement. Some do suggest that Ham actually, because there's some obviously with translations and meaning of the time and the different sayings that people create of the time has alternate meanings. Some suggest that Ham actually engaged in intercourse with his mother, which is just I didn't know that until actually trying to read about this curse of Ham. Some believe that that is why the curse came about, because later in Leviticus 20:11 they're pointing out that they state in the Bible, and the man that lieth with his father's wife have uncovered his father's, right? And hopefully you can read it there. I'll just say it, whatever. This is probably not going to be monetized anyway. Uncovered his father's nakedness. So there's a double meaning around that word. Okay. So this is where it comes from. So at the end of the day, the idea was that Ham was cursed. Black people, African people, are descendants of Ham. And as a part of that, going back to this piece right here, or did I pull it up? Going back to this, you're cursed and you are to be a slave to your brethren. Somewhere it says that in the passage. So now, there were some people that came against that and said, no, that is not true. For example, there's Robert Boyle, who was a theologian and had some other titles as well. He refuted the idea that blackness was caused by the curse of Ham. So there were people that spoke against it, but that's where this image comes from. Now, look at this image. Look at this image again. You see this. And look at this image. Really? Is there that much difference? You see the royal family. You see Meghan Markle, clearly a biracial woman. And you see the mother of Meghan looking down at the child. Everyone's smiling. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen the queen so happy, honestly. Most of the time when I see the queen in the news, she doesn't look too happy. Looks very happy. Probably, I'm just guessing, there might not have been as much happy smiles had the child been a little darker, right? So, Blanquemiento. Okay, so how does this relate to Plaçage, right? And welcome in King of Kill. Hey, Teddy. Nice to see you. King of Kill is saying propaganda. Dominic is saying life imitating art. Definitely, because that is Brazil. And I'm going to show you a few things. Let's wait to get into Plaçage, because what I want to point out with Plaçage is that back in the day in the 1800s, with these women going, hey, I don't have anything. I want a family and I want my children to have things, right? I want them to have a good life. I'll go into this beneficial arrangement, get a comfortable lifestyle, have a furnished home, get some financial arrangements set up for me and my children, and I can use the money to set up a business. And this is just kind of the way things are here in New Orleans. As I am a free woman, but I'm also a woman, and I need to marry, right? If I want to build a family, have children, or I could do plessage, of course, because who else would I marry? This is the case I presented in the first video where we looked at the choices that the women had at the time. They didn't have too many choices. It was either try to compete with the Creole women that would have dowries attached to them, or date a man that was not free. So date a slave, marry a slave. I keep saying dating, but it was definitely marriage, marriage the goal. Marry a slave, which had its own struggles, which we're going to talk about more in another video. Or plessage. That's the easiest option. White men all around, pick one. Go to this ball. Let's set this arrangement up, and you're going to have a chill life. Seems pretty easy, right? I feel like men, if they were in that place, they'd probably pick the same thing. Some men. But let's look at these stats for Brazil. What's the big deal? Jessica, why are you even bringing this up? Well, this is why. Let me see if I can find what I'm looking for. Hopefully these things actually attached. Let's see. Where are my images? Oh, here we go. Okay. So this is the makeup of Brazil today. And these stats I just pulled online. I was trying not to do Wikipedia, so I pulled diversity abroad. And I want to point out the population mixture because Brazil is very diverse. White population, 47.7%. Mulatto, mixed white and black population, 43.1%. Black, 7.6%. So black people are the minority. Asian people, which I mean, I don't know if it's common for many Asian people to live in Brazil, 1.1%. And indigenous. So the originals, right? The original people, 0.4%. So very synonymous to, even if you look at Australia, you look at the United States, you look at Canada, like we know what happened. That's the makeup. Now, what's the other thing to be considered? I don't know if I brought it up here. I did. So colorism. We talked about colorism, but we've also talked about colorism from the standpoint of being in your own community, people of color, and having this feeling that you are othered now because maybe everyone else is mixed race and they're looking down on you because whiteness is still the priority, just like in that painting. Oh my god, thank heavens we have a white baby. We have knocked out the blackness of the family. This is what the painting is suggesting. But if everyone in the room has that thinking, how are people going to treat me, even if they're of color? Yeah, they have a little tint to their skin, but I have more melanin that they despise. They think it's a curse. How am I going to get treated? So I'm going to read a few comments and then I'm going to jump into this next video if I can find it for you, and then we'll peel off of here. Kinga Kill is saying, when I said propaganda, I was referring to the Bible. Someone had an interesting take on Plaçage. He pointed out the fact that whenever a people were conquered, their conquerors would enslave the men and have children with the women. Plaçage is the same. Kind of, but kind of not. I think what you're talking about is just generally, obviously, the schools of war, which we've seen for a long time. We even read Greek, you know, Greek books, which some of us were forced to read in school, where the men would are the women because these are schools of war. Take the women, take everything, take the treasures, the riches, the women, right? That's pretty common. With Plaçage, this is an open agreement and there are benefits for the woman. With spoils of war, what was the benefit for the women, really, than being conquered, right? With Plaçage, it was more about you have a choice, right? It's not like you're forced to do anything. It's not like someone just conquered New Orleans over and over again and kept making these women, right? And putting the men in slavery. No, these were free people of color. The men were free, the women were free. And so some women chose to marry free men of color, right? But what was the benefit of the Plaçage agreement? Well, a lot of it was centered around this very comfortable lifestyle, and a very comfortable lifestyle, not just for them, but thinking about their children. So that is what I want to point out the differences, King of Kill. I get what you're saying, but this was very much an open choice for the women. And oftentimes, the family, the mother, the grandmother, were pushing this. So, good point. Thank you. And King of Kill is saying was not slavery war in Africa. Well, what you're saying, King of Kill, is not specific to Africa. Just like war. People were fighting wars, not just in Africa, all around the world. War is not a new thing. War didn't just pop up. It's been, for as long as our history can go back to. So that's the difference from what I'm seeing as we're reading these different texts. Okay, so the other video that I wanted to highlight, I'm probably going to have to find it. So give me a minute. So if you do have any questions or anything, pop them into the chat as I am searching through my history, because I was watching this video and it was about the Brazilians. The Brazilian people were actually talking about these challenges that they had, and it was very I'll just say it was pretty eye opening to hear them talk, and I could understand the similarities, you know, comparing it to the US. Like they're going through some of the same things that we are, and it's pretty sad. There's also, we'll probably have to talk about another video, Blanquemiento in the Caribbean as well. So it's a lot here. Let me see if this one might pull up the video I was looking at before. I may not be able to find it, guys. I might have to save it for another video, but I think it will be really good for this topic. Let me try my history again. That's annoying because I will listen to, let's see. Is this it? This might be it. Hmm. Man, it's these shorts that are getting me. It's the shorts. Okay, let's see. I'll search Brazil. Oh, this must have been it. Oh, this is it. Okay, I found it. Okay, so here's a heads up. It is going to be, I don't remember if they were speaking Portuguese or Spanish. I want to say they were speaking Spanish, but I feel like they probably were speaking Portuguese. I could probably just understand some of it because of the Spanish. But let's take a look at this video, and you guys let me know what you think as you hear them talking. The title is Why Race in Brazil is Confusing, is a confusing loaded topic. So let's move forward with this. Oh, let me hide this other stuff so you can see. Okay.
Meu nome é Simone.
Meu nome é Regina.
Meu nome é Joacinei.
Race, color, identity in Brazil, it's complicated.
By the way, they're definitely speaking Portuguese, by the way. Okay, so jumping into it.
Even within the same family, how you see yourself and how others see you are not always the same thing. Meet Simone's family. They live in a community on the outskirts of Rio de Janeiro.
Meu nome é Rodrigo.
Eu sou Isabelle. Daniele.
Jéssica. Meu nome é Sara. E eu tenho 5 anos e minha idade é 5 anos.
Para mim só existe duas raças, branco ou negro, né? Branca, logicamente, eu não sou, então eu sou negra.
Eu sou branca.
Eu sou preta. Eu me acho preta, mas as pessoas me acham morena. A minha prima Jéssica é branca, o cabelo dela é liso.
Minha mãe é branca e meu pai era negro.
Meu pai é branco. A minha mãe é preta.
Minha raça é negra.
A minha cor mesmo é marrom bombom, mas como não tem isso, eu sou pardo, né?
Eu acho que o Ney é negro.
Pardo significa ser uma pessoa misturada.
A minha filha é branca, embora ela é misturada. Eu sou negra e o pai dela é branco.
A minha cor é marrom.
Ela é branca pela cor da pele que ela tem.
Por que a sua cor é marrom?
Não sei.
Eu acho que a raça muda a minha vida, acho que desde o início, né? Sou ciente da história toda que eu carrego quando me identifico como negro, o peso que isso tem.
Minha cor nunca influenciou e nem influencia em nada.
Se você tem um aspecto de branco, né, acho que as portas se abrem muito mais facilmente.
A parte ruim de ser negra é porque você é classificado pela sua cor, não pelo que você é.
Quando você vai se candidatar a uma vaga de emprego, muitas das vezes você tem as mesmas qualificações ou até maiores do que aquela pessoa branca e as pessoas preferem, né, escolher aquela pessoa branca. Eu e Simone, minha esposa, nós temos pais preto e branco, mas só que ela tem características maiores da parte preta do que eu. Então, eu transito mais fácil no meio do povo do que ela.
Pelo fato de eu ser negra e as minhas irmãs serem brancas, às vezes quando tinha aquelas brigas, né, às vezes elas me chamavam de neguinha, macaca e aquela coisa da briga ali em si, né, mas na hora eu me sentia mal, mas depois passava.
Que eu me lembro, eu nunca chamei ela de neguinha nem de macaca.
Se eu pudesse, eu não mudaria minha cor.
Não, eu não mudaria minha cor.
Ah, minha cor é linda, né? Ser negro é lindo.
Okay, so wow, what stood out to you in that video, first of all? And I'll talk about some of the things that stood out to me. The first one is these two words, pardo and mix, which means mix, and then negra, which means black or in the feminine, right? Negra, negro. So you see the two mixed race people. The man who says, I'm mixed, he's mixed, white, black, and the woman that is mixed white and black, but she says she's black. Meanwhile, the other person says they are mixed. So we have some of the same things happening here in the United States. This conversation of, okay, well, you're mixed, you're clearly not black, you're unambiguous. Like, I don't necessarily know you're fully black, so you need to be called mixed. Or a person that is mixed and they're saying, no, I identify as black. So a lot of that is going on. We saw that happening. King of Kill, you're saying you couldn't read the subtitles. Sorry, let me put the video in the chat so you can check it out later. I'll put this in here so you can see it. The chat is weird for me. Let me open YouTube real quick on my end. The chat is weird. Sorry, you're going to hear a little double. Let me put it on mute. I'm going to throw this in here so you can check it out at your leisure. But that was the main thing that stood out to me. Also, the fact that the white woman, there's this instance where the black girl, she's saying that she called her a monkey. She called her Blackie. these two different words that are derogatory within their same group. So they're all technically, people of color, right? But they're even having these instances where, see, the visibly white person is calling someone else blackie, monkey. So this colorism that exists, right? So a lot of things to unpack, and then you also see that the young one, the girl, the child, is called white because of their skin color. So they're basing it on a lot of different things. Now, the next thing I want to close this out with is this article that we looked at in regards to plessage and why. Why was it actually useful? Why would plessage be something that would be useful? Does anyone have any thoughts? And useful for whom? Clearly not black people. Like at the end of the day, like black people in the end, if you're looking at those stats for Brazil, 47% white roughly, 40 I think it said 43% mulatto or mulatto, and then black 7%. Not many black people, not many fully black people in Brazil. And they have this practice, which you saw in the video earlier, where this is just the thinking. You whiten the race. It's just common. You get a little money, you write in a race. You get the opportunity, you write in a race. This is literally the thinking, is what people are saying about Brazil. And honestly, if you're looking at the statistics, that kind of backs up some stuff. It backs it up. So let's see. I think this one. Hey, Sugar, I see you. I'm trying to find the right article, you guys, because you guys know I constantly have these different articles up on my computer. And let's see if this one is it. Let's see. Okay, yes, this is it. So if you look at this article, so it's segregation of the free people of color. And this is talking about the construction of race in antebellum New Orleans. And there's a particular statement in here, and it's talking about the colonial periods, growth of the free population of color, and the reasons why. It was a bit political. So it says the French, so they had a French regime and a Spanish regime. And there's some differences in how they treated the free people of color and also how it came about. So the French began utilizing African slaves for agriculture in 1712 for African knowledge of irrigation systems and rice cultivation in tropical environments. The first slave ship arrived in Louisiana, 1719. With the introduction of Africans into the colony, the French colonists adopted a series of laws called the Code Noir, or Black Code, to govern relations between Africans and Europeans and to regulate the emancipation of slaves. Importantly, these laws clearly distinguish free persons of color from slaves. Free persons of color, as well as emancipated persons, held the same rights as those held by white Europeans. The code listed many ways in which a slave could become free, including earning one's freedom through defending the colony or teaching a master's children. During the period of French governance, a complicated understanding of race that took into consideration, among other things, free or enslaved status, skin color, and place of birth emerged in reaction to the difficult colonial conditions and disproportionate number of European men to women within the colony. Now, the Spanish regime. When the Spanish took control of the Louisiana colony, they continued to have policies outlined in the Code Noir. But the new governing regime faced an enormous challenge in maintaining the loyalty of the colonists to prevent insurrection by a growing population of African slaves and to ensure the loyalty of a significant number of people living within the colony. These are free people of color. If you see there, id s, or that is to say, the free people of color. The Spanish colonial regime developed additional opportunities for the emancipation of slaves in the Code Nor and attempted to create separate social groupings within the free population of African descent. They note their source there. A component of Spanish policy was the acceptance of relationships, I will say, between white Europeans and persons of African descent. And we know what that was pushing. It wasn't white women with black men, it was black women with white men. This helped to generate a significant population of color that was loyal to the Spanish crown. During Spanish rule, the number of free people of color in Louisiana nearly doubled in size. And we saw those stats in the last video. I won't cover that again. From 1791 to 1805, the free population of color grew from 862 to 1,566. And it continues to grow, right? We looked at those stats before. The Spanish, like the French, had a fluid concept of race that considered many factors, including skin color and ancestry. For example, in areas within Louisiana colony, such as Point Coupe, northwest of New Orleans, a rigid socio-racial hierarchy was not followed by the colonists, and a number of people with mixed race ancestry were accepted by those of European descent as whites. This is not to say, however, that a racial hierarchy did not exist in other places or in other contexts. So they had distinguished between light-skinned, pardo, and dark-skinned, moreno, which you've probably heard if you've taken Spanish classes. You may not have heard of pardo, but you probably heard of moreno. Or it would end in an A if you are talking about a woman. Anyway, I wanted to bring it back here because this is, as we explore Plaçage, this is the political aspect of Plaçage, and also, in some instances, you could say, obviously, depending on who you're talking about, Plaçage is good for some, bad for others. I'm going to look at the comments to see thoughts, but I wanted to wrap it up because it literally shows the thinking, how different the thinking was with the Spaniards and how this thinking is still there in Brazil. There is a change, there has been a change happening, but the thinking is there. And until you free your mind, nothing changes as far as I'm concerned. So let's see. I don't understand your stance. It seems like you support Plaçage, but as it pertains to Brazil, you acknowledge that it was detrimental to us. Well, Plaçage, I don't know if it's happening today. This was more specific to this time. And it's very specific to this time because, of course, I like putting myself as a woman in the 1800s, a black woman in the 1800s. What do you think a woman is going to do? King of Kill? What do you think I'm going to do? If I were to want a family like these Haitian women wanted, and I'll bring up the article on that as well, what were the options? And I think today, look, this is more informational. So I do not think it's the plight of, say, black women necessarily to uphold the race or make sure that, we still have black people around, the population isn't dwindling, because what we're seeing in most countries, we're going to look at Australia at some point, is with this type of thinking still being present, I don't know if it really changes. I don't know. Obviously, I don't think black people are just going to disappear. There's a whole continent of Africa where there are plenty of African people. However, it does beg the question of the downside of Plaçage or of this idea of, obviously, Blanquemiento. I don't know how to pronounce it since it's technically, Portuguese is a totally different pronunciation than Spanish. So I'm probably butchering how they pronounce some of these things. But there is a downside. So my stance, King Hill, in terms of if you're talking about just interracial dating and marriage, I still say, obviously, especially for Black women, you have to go where you're happiest, love who you love who loves you, clearly. And that's not always going to be a Black man, obviously, if you're a straight woman. So no, I don't think you have the plight of, holding things down or anything like that. But I wanted to show this information because with this thinking of Plaçage, this political plan clearly that the Spaniards had to make sure that people were loyal to their crown and to kind of keep the tensions down, creating these, can't really say marriages, right? These extra legal systems in place. That was the reasoning behind it. It was very political. Dominic says this all stems from Francois de Bernier, a Frenchman's publication 1684, A New Division of the Earth. Ooh, I'm going to have to check that out, Dominic. A New Division of the Earth. I will look it up. Thank you for sharing. And thanks for coming in, Sugar. Let me know what you think about this. Diamond, hey, welcome in. Hey, Miss Four Roller, how are you? King of Kill says all Plaçage is political. I understand Black women of the past choosing to do so, but today Black women shouldn't do it for the reasons of the past. The reasons of the past were to live a good life. The reasons of today are still going to be to live a good life. Like if a woman is dating, now the difference is we have choices. It's not like, oh my gosh, we either marry a slave or we marry another free man of color, but then they were competing with the Creole women that have dowries, or we have to enter into this not even marriage, but it's kind of a left-handed marriage, right, with a white man. Obviously, it's not the same in that context, and we don't have to get married, right? It's not as much pressure to do so just to live and thrive. So there's a lot of that context. However, for women that are wanting to get married, just like we talked about in other videos, there is definitely a plus side to considering dating and marrying interracially inside the United States, not looking at Brazil, obviously, for that conversation. The reason and the thinking of Brazil is very interesting. The interesting thing about Brazil is not just, it's more open, right? It's the women, it's the men, the Black women, the Black men. It's almost like they're aspiring, all of them, to just find a white person, like just find a white person to date and marry, right? I don't think that is the same thinking here in the US, of course. However, in this dynamic where, again, hopefully this will stop, but in the dynamic where you have, black men online saying, Black women aren't the option. You shouldn't even look at them. You should just, you know, get these white women. Obviously, I'm paraphrasing, I'm shortening some of the conversations that some men that have gained a lot of popularity are having. Well, what do women do? What do women do in that instance? So, like I said about Plaçage, I think in some ways the past repeats itself. So, Black women will have to make certain choices, tough choices probably, just as the women did before us, unless something changes. I'm not seeing that. But again, Plaçage, it had its benefits. And that's why the women entered into those arrangements. Oh, man. Dominic says France, in a sense, is responsible for the creation of race, along with other European nations being complicit. Yeah, race only came about as a political, right? Exactly. Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that, Miss Roller. Hey, Toja. Hello. Welcome in. So, Black women today should marry white men for financial gain. Not just financial gain. It comes more, and I'm going to post a video, King of Kill. It comes more so down to what are some of the things that Black women are wanting. If Black women are wanting a marriage, chances of marriage, if you are solely looking at the Black population of men, and if you are an educated Black woman, the statistics are tough. Obviously, not for all. Am I saying that all Black women even want to get married? No, that's not the case. Not all women want to get married. Not all women are interested in men. Not all women want to have children. So that's not the case. However, for the ones that do, I do agree with the sociologist that said, look, you need to open up your dating options. And great if you marry a Black man, but don't just limit your options to that, because if you're looking at the statistics of available men to date, there's not a one-to-one scenario, just as the woman during the 1800s found the Haitians. Let me see if I can find the segment. But the Haitian women or the Haitian refugees that came here were like, what's going on? It's a 2-to-1 type of relationship here, men to women. There's not enough men for everyone. There's not enough free men of color for all of us. So if I want to have a family, I have to compete with these Creole women or choose a slave, or I guess I have to enter into this Plaçage agreement, which does have its benefits. Let's do that because maybe my children will have a better chance. I will be able to start a business with my money, yada yada. Right? So that's the thinking of the time. Let's see. Here's the one with the benefits. And sorry, you're probably going to hear me scraping. Oh, here it is. Okay. Let me see what the title of this article says. University of North Carolina Press, The Strange History of America. Okay. All right. So let's pull up this one and then, yeah, closing it out because we are approaching the end of the time. Let me see. Bear with me. Let's see. Oh, it might be this one. I think maybe it's this one. Hold on. Let's see what it looks like. Okay, that's not it. That's not it. That is definitely not what I was looking for. So great. Let me pull up this other one. I think it's just going to say JSTOR on it. Let's try this again. Oh, it's this one, I think. Okay, so yeah. So the thing I wanted to point out here real quick is they talk about this wave of Haitian refugees. They were going to New Orleans in 1809. And this is kind of where the stereotype of the quadroon emerged. So there were 9,000 refugees and they made their way to New Orleans, right? At least a third of the migrants were free people of color. And so this doubled the existing population of the 3,000 already here or there in New Orleans. Marriage was their preferred family pattern, but for the refugees, that option was defeated by demographics and lack of wealth. So these are two things that are still relevant to today. Sorry. So two things that are relevant to today. Demographics, generally women normally outnumber men, I actually think the stats, I read somewhere that babies that are born, most of them are girls compared to boys, which makes sense with the science behind it. Anyway, the demographics and a lack of wealth. Obviously, most women want to be protected and they want to live a nice, thriving life. Like in the video we talked about last week. So these are two considerations that are still here today. So by 1829, they calculated there were 2.2 free women of color to every free man of color. What are the demographics today? I don't know the exact numbers, but I know that women are outnumbering men, especially in Black community, for a lot of different reasons. And we have the issues of poverty rates. So if a woman is like, okay, I want to have a child that is going to live a good life, and we know that for boys, Black boys, being raised in poverty or born into poverty, they have lower chances of getting out of that, regardless of if they're, you know, getting into relationships, partnering up with people. And Black girls have better chances of getting out of poverty unless they have a child, right? Knowing that, why would a Black woman today, in thinking not just of herself but her children, proactively choose to just date without considering money at all? That sounds really silly to me. Meanwhile, people are all over the internet blaming women of color, Black women, of everything wrong in the Black community. I just don't, with this scenario, I just don't see like, what would be the benefit? What would be the benefit? Dominic, the publication I was reading from, I read from a couple, honestly. So we read from the University of North Carolina Press, Segregation of the People, of the Free People of Color, and the Construction of Race in Antebellum New Orleans. Let me put that in the, it's a journal article. Let me put that in the chat for you so you can review it. Check it out. I got to open up YouTube. I'm glad I'm over in YouTube because what in the world are you doing, sir? We're not talking about any of that because there's also a male version of that, Toja. I'll put you in timeout first, and then if I see another crazy message, I'll just block you. But yeah, there's plenty of things that you can see of men and women of every type of race doing some interesting things, but that is not what this channel is about. So those messages are out of there. Lovely. Where's my moderator tonight? What is going on? I guarantee you, I never have a moderator when I need one. So King of Kill, how are you not a moderator? King of Kill, you're a moderator. How have you not been a moderator? What's up with that? Hey, Samri. Thanks for joining. Nice to see you. I'm kind of closing down the chat. I just saw some crazy messages in the chat a second ago, which doesn't even make sense. I swear, just Black women can just get online and start talking about anything. I could be on here talking about the sky is blue, I feel like, and someone's going to come out of the woodwork and say some negativity. And I'm a small channel. It just doesn't make any sense. Literally doesn't make sense. Whatever. So I'm gonna close it out. That was the point of the video. I am gonna replay the last couple of videos just because I want you guys to check out this actual full video. I'm gonna play what's happening in Brazil. That's gonna close us out while I look for the actual video so I can share it so you can watch the full thing because I think it will be helpful. Thank you, King of Kill. I appreciate you being the moderator.
yes, there's a lot of interracial marriages and couples, but I have noticed that once Black Brazilians in particular get any kind of money. I mean, I'm not even talking about filthy rich. I'm just talking about maybe just like a nice job that you won't lose, some education. I found that many of them, both men and women, tend to marry white. Can you explain this to us?
Tend to marry white is a Brazilian thing because of the whole idea that was implemented in our ideas in the beginning of the 20th century. Okay, so it's not just because of the money. You will see these relations happening also in lower groups. So if you go to the favelas, you're gonna see that happen. You're gonna see it all over. The point is because the very white people are not marrying into the
they do not marry black people at all.
The very white Brazilians, they're very segregated, as segregated as Mississippi 1965.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. They're the very white. So the white people in Brazil, we divide them academically in 3 categories. The very white people, the white people, and the read as white people. Like in Brazil, Jewish people are white, and Turkish people are white. Japanese people are white.
Okay, cool. Maybe socially white?
Socially white. The poor whites, the ones who live in the ghettos with the black Brazilians, they are the ones who actually can be racist and marry a black person. This happens in Brazil. A white person, a white poor person marries a black person and says, I love you, but I don't love what you are. I love the kid that was gonna come out of you, that's gonna be beautiful. And then we erase the whole idea that this kid is black as well.
So people, when they're actually in these interracial families, nobody is kind of consciously talking about blackness or saying that they are black.
No, they're just repeating the mistakes because it was in schools. If you read books from 1917 for 1945, it was in the book.
I gotta find this book. I want to find.
I can show you. That. I can show you that later. And everything is based on the picture that I wanted to put here.
Explain to us this picture.
This picture is called the Redemption of Cam. Whatever. Cam was one of the kids of Noah, and he saw his father naked, and that's how they justified that the black race was cursed. The Christians, they justify racism throughout the years through the curse that is based basically on the Bible.
Okay, and we saw those passages I showed earlier, providing more detail about Ham and the curse of Ham and how the enslavers really pushed this idea, especially during the time of abolition, to push this idea that no, this is just a part of the curse. This blackness is their curse. They are meant to serve us. So one of the things that stood out to me is the point where he said these poor white persons, because he segmented the different groups, right? So the really white people, right? They're not doing any of these unions. But the poor white people, they'll entertain this. However, he mentioned the racists. They could be racist and enter into these unions. Well, we've seen many instances here in the United States where the partner is clear. Like I've seen so many videos where I've seen a white woman with biracial kids cursing at them, even in public. So I don't even know what's going on, with the men as well. So it's like this idea that in Brazil, they know this, but they're willing to enter into these unions because, in the end, the child will be white. That's interesting. Again, the mentality. And that's really the issue with all of this, the mentality. The mentality is spread across the world at this point. White is right, black is wrong. And you see it at different levels and you see it play out in different ways. How do you even get away from that if it's so deeply rooted into the mindset? And he mentioned, it's in books. It's just this is what people are doing. So I'll play the last video to hopefully close us out. Any last statements will kind of wrap up, and I'll say good night to you, lovely people.
The eugenics politics. The eugenics politics was pretty much the one who showed that yes, we need to whiten the population because black people are less intelligent, less civilized. And this picture shows the grandma. You see the grandma raising the hands to the Lord, thanking God that her daughter, who is a mixed girl, married a white settler that came in this new idea of whitening the country, and they have a white kid, very white kid, that is in his tiny hands just blessing the grandma, if you look in the picture, and she's thanking God that the curse was broken. That picture was shown in 1895, and also in this Congress I told you that happened in London, in which
they showed that picture.
Brazil showed that picture to introduce to the Europeans what was his idea to having a more civilized country after slavery. We're gonna whiten the country.
Again, the thinking and how it was playing out in New Orleans. If you want to check out the last video I did, we looked at what actually stopped all of this fluidity in terms of race that the French and then Spaniards had within New Orleans. Now, plessage was something that happened in other parts of the country, but really it was New Orleans that is the biggest place, and how the Americanization of New Orleans, that is what really ended all of that, where we were reading those segments where they said, oh, the free persons of color, they had the same rights as the white people. That didn't fly once the Americanization happened in New Orleans. So we'll talk about that more in a future video, but you saw the population decrease and the reversal of all of what that political intention was there for and what happened after. Closing remarks. Dominic saying exactly King of Kill. Oh, sorry, I'm reading these in reverse. Race or race constructs didn't even exist in biblical times. It's not even a clever. Oh, okay, gotcha. Told ya. I just document black women who promote dating white men. All of this can be held accountable in world courts. What? Genocide. Are you also, I just have a question for you, Toja. Are you also going onto platforms with black men when they say black women or this, that, and the other, all kinds of negative terms, and saying that black men shouldn't date shouldn't date black women, or that, for example, we reviewed on this channel podcasters that were saying they're not down with the brown or so many different weird stuff they were saying. Uh they don't like night riders, or they're not really night riders. They don't like Shaquitas or Shanique, whatever they said. Are you also going into their channels and telling them that they're committing genocide? I'm very curious. Do you actually have the same thinking towards black men? King Kill is saying these are all symptoms of systemic racism. We must all do what we can to fight it. I think, look, this black woman is not fighting the fights. I look. This is the most I'm doing is informing. No, look, the most I can do right now is inform people, share what I'm seeing, have discussions. I think it's really good to talk about these things, but I'm not solely going to say, hey, I'm going to fight the power or any of that. Like, at this point, does it doesn't really matter. I think it would be different if the collective group was saying, hey, this is what we're going to do and this is what we're going to offer. And, Black women, you've had these struggles and this struggles. This is what we're going to commit to you. And this is why you should not go this way. Right? Kind of like in that video where the girl's talking to that comedian and he's swaying her, talking about, ooh, mansions and generational wealth and ooh, like this. And Charlemagne's just like, no, 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 because people talk bad about you and talk about this and that. If the conversation is, hey, no, we can offer you X, Y, and Z, that's like a no brainer, of course. Most women are hypergamous, right? Isn't that what people are saying online? So, what's the argument? But I think at the end of the day, women should date who makes them happy. That's always going to be my stance, regardless of color, regardless of, some of the silly stuff that we've politicized and put together. But this is a good video, I think, for someone that wants to understand a little bit more on, the implications of this idea of plessage, the political standpoint of plessage, which we talked a bit in the earlier video as well. An example of kind of the system where a mentality of white is better. And then also just a comparison again of the images. So you can see this one. I don't know if you can see it, but you can see the image of, oh, let me do it this way. So you can see this one. 1895. This was the painting. And then you can see this one. With that, thank you all for joining. And I will see you all in another video. And welcome in, Cassandra. Hopefully you can catch the replay. It's an interesting discussion. Have a good night, everyone. Bye.